Hey everybody, if you watched my last video, you will probably recognize these fast Fourier transform 3D visuals that we have going on here. So on the right is my song, and what we were analyzing in that last video about why isn't my song louder when compared to another song that was mastered or produced professionally, we looked at this mid-range area, and if you heard what I was saying about those equal loudness contours, you'll know that our ears are more sensitive to this middle area. This over here is a professionally produced song, and if you compare the bass signal, it's still equal, but there's more content going on here. What I'm hoping to do is I decided to go back to the mix. I'm not just going to solve this in the mastering stage. I want to go back to the mix, check out what bass levels are going on in the song, see if we can get them under control. Let's just play a little bit.
This world, so we look at the king. Jesus who perfected faith through suffering. He's not ashamed to call his brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run. Holy, holy.
You can tell I think the vocals sit nicely.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rap.
Definitely the sub bass and the keys, which are a type of synth, are pretty powerful. So I'm gonna drop the sub bass and level a little bit. Actually, no, I'm gonna look at the EQ first. Okay, so yeah, I don't even have a high pass filter on here. All right, let me just play around with this a little bit.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest. Hear his voice and rest.
All right, I also want to see if there is some parallel compression. I started this song a long time ago. Side chain. Okay, so it is coming in from, it is side chaining from
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
So it has a really short attack. I'm going to increase decrease the attack, increase the release a little bit here. So it clamps it down a little bit longer.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest.
I added a gain on the end here because, you know, the sub bass is coming through massive, but I can't decrease this by increments that I will recognize. I want to be pretty exact here because I'm getting to the end of the mix and I want to be able to recall and mess with some of the settings that are a little bit more specific. Decreasing it by 2 dB here. Let's see how I'm feeling about specifically the sub bass right now.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest. Hear his voice and rest.
I think I'm gonna drop the gain. I like where it's sitting in the mix, although I'm gonna bring this back just a little bit so some of those higher harmonics come down.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of.
Let's go to span. Where is span? Span is the amazing frequency analyzer from Voxango. All right, let's listen to it.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest. Hear his voice and rest.
All right, so something funny is happening here where this is a huge project that I have. I haven't bounced a lot of the vocals and tracks because I am still working on it. Like obviously I came back to the mix. And so because I'm producing this, I haven't bounced everything to audio. Span here is lagging and actually is holding up kind of some of the levels nicely that I want to check out. So if you look at the sub bass, pay attention here to the frequencies, the higher amplitude notes are hitting, and then that'll influence some of the higher harmonics up above, but really where the amplitude, the notes are coming from the sub bass.
He calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest. Hear his voice and rest. Holy, holy is the King who calls.
All right, I'm going to look at this through FabFilter. I just think you get a little bit more in-depth detail. So I know that's a stock plugin and you could be fine with just that, but I definitely want to look at this here, especially with their frequency analyzer. You can get like big time here. Here we go.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and wrath.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy.
Okay, something is happening where there's another like sub bass. I'm confused. All right, so this is really good to figure out here. So there's definitely some low notes going on in the chorus, but once the sub bass drops out, I'm not really sure where those are coming from. So let's check that out.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and wrath.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy all.
Okay, so I think some of the overcrowding in the bass, and you know, this comes down to instrumentation, composition, and obviously, like I said, this took me a long time to make, so there are some instruments, like I wanted more bass, but now when I'm getting to the mastering stage, it's too much. I don't know, I might take this out. I mean, that would be pretty drastic, but let's see what we can do with it.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest. Hear his voice and rest. Holy, holy is the King who calls. Let your voice say yes. Let your voice say.
All right, well, I definitely like some of the content that brings, so we're gonna add another gain here and reduce that and let.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and
We're gonna bring down this a little bit.
he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest. Hear his voice.
Now, one of the interesting things as I'm looking at this is that I have a boost here, and you know, the 300 range is normally where people say that the mud, where the mud is. So let's manipulate this a little bit. All right, we're gonna open that up. I don't remember. I haven't used the stock plugin in a little bit. All right, let's focus on some of those lower mids.
And he calls brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Holy, holy is the King who calls. Let your voice say yes. Let your voice say yes. There's no time like right now. There's no time like today. If you hear his voice, time to obey. There's no time like right now.
All right, now that might impact later on. There's a big build here. Actually, the 3D analysis didn't show a ton of concern there. Let's keep going though. See if this is really helping what we've done so far.
Perfected faith through suffering. He's not ashamed to call his brothers, not ashamed of his sons. He took on flesh to save us all, and to him we run.
Holy, holy is the King of all. Hear his voice and rest.
And there's kind of there's a build at the beginning. I want to make sure that hasn't lost its impact.
Get my armor on, get fed, sought the Lord already. This morning I'm about to get bread. Let him lead me on and upon here, and I get led. Hebrews 1. In many times, in many ways, the God of our fathers, but by the prophets that weren't fought and weren't honored. But in these days, he sent his son, the one of perfected faith.
I kind of want to route all the bass, the bass instrument, route them to a single bus, and then put a compressor on it. What's going on here? All right, so I've already brought down the low end here, but I think I'm gonna bring up the pass filter here.
Not just a prophet or a good man, express image of God and all of them at his right hand. There standing when Stephen's.
Because there's, I really like the sub bass, just kind of that mellow sound. But a lot of these instruments are bringing their own flavor as well, so I don't want to totally lose them. I mean, I could cut it out and it'd be a little bit simpler of an arrangement, but I like what's going on so far. Here we're going to output to, let's just do 29. So bus 29 is where our bass is going. So this is our other kind of bassy instrument, so I'm going to output that as well. And then let's just solo this, make sure it's what we want. I'm hearing some clicks on the sub bass, which are concerning. So let's mess with that a little bit. Let's see. You know what? It might be from the compression here. All right, we're gonna mess with some of these things. I'm gonna solo so you won't be able to hear me. It's definitely not perfect yet, but it's definitely the compression. All right, so I'm gonna try a different compressor actually, see if that will help, because I don't know, the combination of attack and release, it just, I don't know, it's not too hard of a knee either. Let's mess with that. Or yeah, I mean, that's the threshold. Does this even have a knee? Okay, we're just gonna change the compressor here. And then we can sidechain a little bit more easily in FabFilter anyways.
Times in many ways, the God of our fathers, but by the prophets that weren't fallen, we're on it. But in these days, he sent his son, the one who perfected faith and showed us love. He's not an angel, not just a prophet or a good man. Express image of God and all of them at his right hand. There standing when Stephen stood up, testified by signs in the preaching of love. He subjected this world, so we look at the king.
So what I see when I look at this is that a lot of these are, it's pretty flat. I mean, yeah, the bass is up a little bit. That'd be normal. And those hi-hats are hitting here pretty good. So I mean, that's not something I'm worried about at this point. I haven't seen anything that worries me about the high end of this, but this is definitely up from where it was. So I forgot to point out as well that the 808 kick is not going to go in the bass bus. I had forgotten to do the 808 kick, but when I put it in there, it punched into the compressor way too much and brought the level down for everything else. So while that is a bus, you know, I'm looking for bus compression and things like that. It was working well with the other bass, and I'm not going to mess with that. Although on that bass, I am going to add just a really steep high pass filter here. I mean, you can do brick wall, just go with 96, which is pretty much, you'll notice that there's actually a notch that gets added because of the EQ. So let's go to like where you can actually start to hear bass, which will be around a little over 20 hertz.
In many times, in many ways, the God of our fathers, but by the prophets that weren't fallen, we're on it. But in these days, he sent his son, the one who perfected faith and showed us love. He's not an angel, not just a prophet or a good man. Express image of God and all of them at his.
All right, we're gonna see how that changes the overall bass level. And one more thing I did want to do was check, and I love how steep that is. Just looks ridiculous, but I love it. I did bring down the 808 kick a little bit. 1 dB, see how that sounds. We're gonna move on in the song a little bit here as well.
If you hear his voice, times
Make sure it sounds good in the choruses.
King of all, hear his voice and rest, hear his voice and rest. Holy, holy is the King who calls, let your voice say yes.
And what I'm doing when I reach over is changing in the interface my headphone volume and when I crank the level up, like we talked about in those equal loudness contours, I want to be hearing more bass. Like if you were at a football game and it was playing out of those massive speakers, you're at a concert, the bass sounds really good when I turn it up. You don't always want to be mixing at that level. You'll get ear fatigue and things like that, but it's good to check. All right, so later in the song, there's a big build and there's lots of things going on, so we want to check that out as well.
By faith, we understand that God created heaven and earth. By faith, Abel offered up a sacrifice of more worth. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death. By faith, Noah made a boat and took 2 of each to have breath. By faith, Abraham left all for the promised land of his call. By faith, Sarah got the power to give birth unto him and trusted her soul. By faith, Abraham offered up his son and would have given up his all. By faith, he lifted the night, but God spared Isaac's life when he saw. By faith, Moses was hidden for 3 months from Egypt's slaughter. By faith, when he grew up, he refused to be the son of Pharaoh's daughter.
All right, it's hard to make a call because the song transitions, it moves forward, and as you can hear with the guitars, more bass comes in.
We understand that God created heaven and earth. By faith, Abel offered up a sacrifice of more worth. By faith, Enoch would...
I'm gonna run. There's a synth. This is what you're hearing with that like gritty grinding sound.
Abraham left all for the promised land of his call. By faith, Sarah got the power to give birth unto him and trust her.
And when you have, just keep in mind too, and I'm keeping this in mind, when you bring this down, it's gradually lowering the level. So even though you bring, a filter, like a high pass filter, it doesn't mean that as soon as you bring it in here, it just cuts off like a brick wall, kind of like the other one you saw where it's, ridiculously straight. So it's just going to kind of gradually roll off, and that's not my main bass instrument. I still have the sub bass, so I don't mind digging away at that there. Also, that muddy range where my voice is, I'm going to bring that down a little bit too, see if that works well.
By faith, we understand that God created heaven and earth.
You know what? I think that ate away a little too much, so let's undo that.
By faith, we understand that God created heaven and earth.
Bring it down just a little bit.
By faith, we understand that God created heaven and earth. By faith, Abel offered up a sacrifice of more worth. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death. By faith, Noah made a boat and took 2 of each to have breath. By faith, Abraham left all for the promised land of his call. By faith, Sarah got the power to give birth unto him and trusted her soul. By faith, Abraham offered up his son and would have given up his all. By faith, he lifted the night, but God spared Isaac's life when he saw. By faith, Moses was hidden for 3 months from Egypt's slaughter. By faith, when he grew up,
So definitely when those guitars come in, there's a lot going on there. Bass guitar. So I already have that pretty well filtered, but let's just check it out. As the bass guitar moves up, it's decreasing in level proportionately. I mean, as it moves up and is pushing into this filter. For me, it's still a little bassy. So what I'm gonna do is move. When I say bassy, obviously it's a bass guitar, but it's kind of bleeding into the vocals and the rest of the stuff with the sub bass and everything like that. So I'm gonna move this up. And then bring down the overall gain just a little bit. Whoops, wrong way.
Moses was hidden for 3 months from Egypt's slaughter. By faith, when he grew up, he refused to be the son of Pharaoh's daughter. By faith, kept the Passover and sprinkled blood on the doors. By faith, they crossed the Red Sea, but Pharaoh's armies couldn't endure. By faith, they conquered kingdoms, sent forth justice, stopped the mouths of lions. By faith, obtained promises and quenched the power of fire. By faith, see back their dead, and now he's come back to life. So set your eyes on life.
I hate eating it away like that, but I just think with all the other bass stuff going on, we're going to have to do that. And I know, a lot of people, if you're a professional mixer, like you shouldn't just focus on the instrument and, be working on that without looking at the other stuff. But that's what I do when I drop this a lot. I'm listening to the overall mix and then kind of just balancing it in the midst of that. And I'm doing a static gain change here because it really doesn't do much change through this section, and I don't have to automate it because I don't use this anywhere else. I want to hear these guitars as well. Okay, so as you can see, I already have a lot going on here. This is a dynamic EQ, but I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. Let's listen to it and work on this, and I'll be listening to the full mix while I go for it.
Just slaughter by faith. When he grew up, he refused to be the son of Pharaoh's daughter. By faith, kept the Passover and sprinkled blood on the doors. By faith, they crossed the Red Sea, but Pharaoh's armies couldn't endure. By faith, they conquered kingdoms, sent forth justice, stopped the mouths of lions. By faith, obtained promises and quenched the power of fire. By faith, see back their dead, and now he's come back to life. So set your eyes on life. Yes, set your eyes on.
All right, so I'm going to bounce this out, bring it into Wavelab. We're going to reanalyze it. It's a couple days since the first recording of the first part of this video. I just got this song in Wavelab, and I haven't even looked at it yet in the 3D analysis. But here's the first song. So let's get this is the first version, that we had already looked at. So there it is. And then I just literally threw this in moments ago. Just got home from work and looking at the new audio file that we made before. And I have some ideas that I might still do yet to the song. But let's check out what this looks like. All right, so this is after all the bass, the things that we did to the bass. And now keep in mind, we haven't done any compression. All right. So let's see. Let's look here. Now it seems subtle, but I am actually really pleased with what I'm seeing. Let's keep this in perspective. We have a lot more content here. As the levels are kind of equal, across the two of them, brought down the bass, brought up everything else. And I am definitely seeing a lot more going on here in the mid-range and also in the a lot higher frequencies. Now above 8,000, it's getting really high, but that's a lot of good content that was already in the song. And so as I compress this, the new version, if I decide to keep it like that, it'll only bring out the best qualities of those features as well, and bring up some of that mid range again, like I want. And these are really high peaks. Look at obviously, if you're like, which frequency is being favored here, it's going to be the bass, but which is it's typical, it's a rap song, but I'm definitely pleased with that when comparing these two. Now the one thing that I want to go back in and look at is the 808s and how they're hitting, and I think that either if I bring them down maybe even a dB or just compress them a little bit, let the transients through, or bring down some of the impact, which we want the impact, but some of those sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming and we get some of this craziness, which is, sounds good right now when you put it in the car, but we want the song anywhere to sound good. So that's the point of kind of bringing these down a little bit. Maybe, like I said, some multi-band compression, just a little bit, bring these down just a touch, and then it'll bring up the rest of these to get the most of the content, so that it's a little bit more. I want it to be a little bit louder when compared to things, and also not have a lot of that low frequency just dominating the energy of the song when you go to play it, so that way you're like, I can't even hear the vocals because the car is shaking too much. Which, if that's what you want, you probably already have your car souped up to have the bass pumping anyways, no matter what the song is. So then this would just be absurd, which maybe is what you want anyways. So isn't it what we all want, but can't always keep. So I just wanted to show you guys, this is the first time I've looked at this, but I'm definitely pleased with what I see. So leave any feedback in the comments, and we'll catch you in the next video.